Welcome once again to Late Night Parents. Your host, Ted Hicks. And in the queue tonight, none other than good friend Danny Thompson, friend to the room, the virtual room, in more ways that we can speak about. Danny, what's new with you?
I mean, it's Labor Day. It's a day of rest. For some of us, we have to go back to work tomorrow, and it's a day of not complaining. It's been a beautiful weekend, and you can't complain about these things nowadays. It's beautiful.
That's true. That's true. When you look at the true meaning of Labor Day and you think about Memorial Day to start the summer, you think about Labor
Hmm.
Day to, unofficially end the summer. Um, we got a lot to be grateful
We
for
do.
our military who
Hmm.
continues to stand tall for us and support us in more ways than we can even mention. So we're appreciative of that. But we're getting in tonight. We're going to talk strict. We're not talking about technology. We're not talking about education. We're not talking parenting. We're not talking product reviews. We're talking the wonderful world of sports. That is Danny Thompson. I want to say Sports Illustrated contributor and editor of the Charlotte Hornets site, or
um,
guest, or in the
um,
process.
right now, I'm just a contributor for SI.com.
Okay.
Also, one of the lead writers at 3pointconversion.com.
Okay.
You never know what happens. Like Ted, you always say, you never know what happens with me nowadays. So it is what it
It's
is.
true. It's true. Caretaker for a certain site on Sports Illustrated to be named later, but we will get into. Let's talk a little hoops. We're not really going to talk bubble hoops because we don't like talking, scores and everything else like that. Because Danny, I like to take your contribution to the show and we can air it tomorrow, next week,
Hmm.
or 2 years from now. Really want to talk with you about your thoughts on. Well, you called me. I was actually at work. I was in the city in Manhattan. My phone was on fire. Twitter was on fire, and you had called me a couple times, and I made sure to call you back in between meetings. And I saw that the Brooklyn Nets have a new coach, and it's an interesting pick, very interesting pick. So I just wanted your thoughts on it.
When I heard the Steve Nash hire, it was interesting because the Athletic had a report earlier on in the week, and when it came to the candidates of who was going to take over the Nets job being considered, no outlet had Steve Nash on this list. So if you were a betting man and went to Vegas and picked Steve Nash, you pretty much won a whole bunch of money. All right, no one knew. On the outside looking in, it's Steve Nash. A lot of people, it's a Hall of Fame point guard, two-time
Right.
MVP. You know, everybody knows his basketball accolades, but what does he have to do with coaching, and how did he get hit this job? Well, if you go back to the Noah's Ark and the whole arc of this whole thing, it was basically Sean Marks and the Nets front office chasing after Steve Nash literally for almost 2 years. They've been wanting
Okay.
Steve Nash, and Steve had overturned coaching opportunities because he wanted to see his kids grow up. He
Mm-hmm.
did. He wanted the kids are at a young age, and he wanted the kids to be at a better age when it came to coaching. And it's understandable. He played for so many years, and you want after you retire, you want to be able to be home. But he wasn't coaching. He was a advisor, consultant, player development, wherever you want to call it, for the last 5 years with the Golden State Warriors. He was there. His first year was a 73-9 Golden State team that arguably was the greatest NBA team never won a championship, losing Game 7 to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, by the way. Go LeBron. All right. But his player development was one of the reasons why a certain Brooklyn Net ended up in Oakland. Kevin Durant is one of the biggest proponents for Steve Nash. They worked together in Oakland as a player in player development. If you look at Kevin Durant's shot over the years, especially his free throws and some of it, the follow through his jump shot, that was all the teaching of Steve Nash. when you know it's respect, when Kevin Durant, arguably one of the best shooters in the NBA and arguably one of the best in the history of basketball, is taking shooting advice from Steve Nash and listening to it, using it in his routine and putting it in arguably his best part of his game, that's respect. Steve also comes with the fact that he worked with the Warriors. He worked with Steph Curry. He worked with Klay Thompson. He worked with all those guys during the championship years. He also had a tremendous amount of being vouched for by his teammates, guys like Steven Jackson, guys like Quentin Richardson, guys like Amari Stoudemire. People knew how good of a person, how great of a leader he was on the court. Yeah, it's easy to run Mike D'Antoni 7 seconds, 7 seconds of offense and shoot the basketball, but no one ran it to the point of Steve Nash. You look at the Rockets teams now, can't get it done. The Knicks are not is more dangerous running that type of offense more than Steve Nash was the maestro for the Suns. This isn't the first time we've seen this happen before, but Kevin Durant was the biggest proponent of it. Durant wanted him. Durant signed off on him. When you're paying a man $170 million, he is the face of your franchise. You are going to listen to what he has to say, especially when it comes to input. Because there's nothing worse, as we learn in the NBA, Ted, from time and time again, there's nothing worse than having a star player and his coach, or maybe potentially her coach one day, not get along. So when you and Ted, we've learned this, star players make decisions. Now, the other question about Kyrie Irving is, how is that going to work? Kyrie Irving's had so many different head coaches he's dealt with over the last couple of years. Didn't work out with Brad Stevens. Didn't work out with Kenny Atkinson. He didn't really play under Jacques Vaughn. So how's it going to work here? Point guards listen to point guards.
True.
Okay. Kyrie's dad played in overseas over years. His godfather's Rod Strickland. So you know where the game came from. But remember, the ultimate teacher of a game is a guy who's a 2-time MVP. Yes, he hasn't won championships, but Kyrie's never won an MVP either. But what he can look up to is the fact that Steve Nash is a Hall of Famer. Respect is always respect, and Kyrie has always respected legends of the game. He's never called out legends of the game before. I think this is a match made in heaven, Ted.
I will tell you this much: as a Brooklyn Nets fan, as part of their fandom, I love the pick. When you had told me about it, altogether, it just, to me, it made sense. I kind of start thinking with you about what about. We don't want to get into the white privilege question yet, but we want to get into why not some other, prominent head coaches that are out there. Why not Mark Jackson? Okay. Why not, why not Jason Kidd? Why not, why not the retreads? And why go with something fresh and new?
Okay, well, Ted, let's you name a coach, and I'll tell you why it wasn't the right fit. I'll let you go first. Go ahead and start naming.
Mark Jackson.
Well, we all know Mark Jackson's not being a head coach. It doesn't have to be pretty much set in stone. People say it's a blackball situation. People knew what went on behind the scenes in Oakland. Okay, Mark Jackson won plenty of games in Oakland, and in most cases deserves a second chance based on what he did as a head coach. But it was what he did when he was off the court as a head coach. No, he wasn't in the news for any type of domestic violence or anything like that to detriment a franchise. But Mark Jackson knows why Mark Jackson is not a head coach in the league. One of the reasons was, he had remarks that were not exactly the most favoritive when it comes to a certain type of group of America. And when your owner is one of those members of that group, it's not a fair look. And there are plenty of other reasons why Mark Jackson's not a head coach in this league. Ted, we can go on a whole podcast going back and forth. There have been a lot of things said about what Mark Jackson did in Oakland. It's way more than just being a basketball coach. It was everything down to assistant coaches, down to his religious beliefs. It was down to dealing with management. And it just wasn't a pretty way to exit. And so until Mark Jackson makes amends with some things around the league, it's like he's not going to see another job anytime soon as a head coach.
What about Ty Lue?
Here's the thing. Ty Lue's won with Kyrie Irving in the championship. They won in Cleveland. They were together for 3 finals and won a championship together. Why is Tyronn Lue not the right guy for the job? I want to say maybe Kevin Durant didn't sign off on it.
Okay.
I mean, because if you look at Lue's resume, 3 finals in 3 years in a championship, that what you would say why he's not the guy there. Remember, Tyronn Lue turned down the Lakers job because, for whatever reason it was. Listen, the Nets offer him a job. Maybe Tyronn Lue wants to win when he does not have Also, at the same time, dealing with LeBron James or Kyrie Irving. Maybe he's trying to see if he can win without them. And I think he ends up with a job, just not this one.
Yeah, I just want to push back on you a little bit. Tyronn Lue, when he had the job with the job offer with the Lakers, that would have been his, but they wanted to tie it to LeBron's contract. So he wanted a 5-year. They only wanted to give a 3. So he kind of took himself out of that, Danny.
Also, at the same time, the Lakers wanted to pick his own assistants. You can't tell him you don't want to. I mean, listen, Tyronn Lue's won championships. He's not some rookie head coach. He's won a championship. He's been to 3 finals. He has that right. And I think any coach should have the right to pick his own staff. No. And Tyronn, like I say, it wasn't to his favor. He's not trying to coach the town LeBron James. He wants financial stability. Who doesn't? Coaches get turned over like apple turnovers at Arby's. No. I understand why you take the job.
So tell us about Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd, who's had opportunities on several occasions, who hasn't done bad, who's had stars, but hasn't been able to get over the hump and has done some dumb things in the process.
Well, Ted, the first thing is, why would the Nets hire a coach they fired in the first place? Listen, Jason Kidd won Coach of the Year the first year in Brooklyn and tried to overthrow the front office.
Right.
He tried to stage a coup in Brooklyn and it got him escorted out the door. So I don't think they want to try that a second time. And now in the NBA nowadays, coaches aren't GMs anymore. I think Doc Rivers is the last of a dying breed and Greg Popovich is the last of a dying breed where it's coach and general manager together for the most part. Doc's the last one basically. They've kind of stripped Doc's powers in LA, and and Pop has given it over to RC Buford in San Antonio. So those days where you see that guy like Tom Thibodeau running both, that doesn't work anymore. So in Jason Kidd, it wouldn't work. Just why bring him back? You got rid of him the first time, and really the second time in Milwaukee, he was good with Giannis, but the other star player and some of the players in the team weren't feeling him either. That's why he had to go, and he hasn't won anything. No.
Gotcha. So you mentioned him, Greg Popovich. There was a lot of chatter about the potential package or what it would cost the Nets to get him to come over. And you're sitting there saying, if you have a legacy already built with the Spurs, then you become like how Phil Jackson kind of became with the Knicks?
It's more like Phil Jackson with the Lakers. I think if Popovich would have left San Antonio for Brooklyn, it would have been like Phil Jackson going to the Lakers. Listen, who knows what the compensation would have been, but Greg Popovich is under contract. This arguably wouldn't have costed money. This thing would have costed players. And Brooklyn really wants to be able to have as many players as possible because you never know what they're trying to do to retool this roster. I don't know what the asking price was. I don't know what the buyout would have been. It's just that I don't know if Brooklyn wanted to ante up because if I'm the Spurs, we're starting with Karis LeVert and draft picks. If you want them that bad, we're going to give them to you, but it's going to cost you. So who knows?
So is the new in thing kind of being like the I was going I you know what? I'll stop that question and say, what about all the rhetoric this past week from Stephen A. Smith and a few others talking about Stephen A. Smith talking about white privilege?
I mean, it was a lot. I mean, you talk about, Byron Scott made a comment, I think today or yesterday, about African Americans not getting the same opportunities with jobs like this. So here's the thing. Stephen A. Smith made a point, and like I said, he's a fellow with Salem State alumni. I went to school with Salem State. He's an alumni there, so we kind of have the same bias because we're both Rams at Winston State. So when you look at what he was saying that African Americans. Now he did say that he did preface it by saying, no offense to Steve Nash, no offense to Sean Marks. He congratulated Steve Nash on the job, and said, good luck, so on and so forth. But
so
while
he
wasn't the job, he said that he prefaced it before he went into it. So he kind of gave a disclaimer, like he knew he was about to go there.
Right.
So here's the thing. We have seen African American head coaches, and Richard Jefferson made the same point. The same day that Stephen made the point, we've seen African American coaches step in right after playing their final game and getting jobs. Jason Kidd did it in Brooklyn. Brooklyn was the first team to do it. Derek Fisher did it with the Lakers.
Right.
We've seen this happen before, where guys have became freshly made and then turned into head coaches. This isn't the first time this has happened. And guess what? it's not a race situation when the franchise player asks the management to go get him.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It's different. You think Brooklyn knew they had to get a head coach to sign off on Kevin Durant with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving's blessing. Steve Nash got a 4-year deal. Kevin Durant has 4 years left on his contract. So this is kind of like the Tyronn Lue deal all over again. When Durant's out the door, Nash is potentially out the door. Makes the perfect sense. Okay. So I don't really think it's a quote unquote white privilege hire. Because here's the thing, Steve Nash has a coaching background. Might not be a head coach, might not be assistant, but when you're in player development, you're working with players on a daily basis, and you have people crediting their game and learning a lot from you, and you have been doing it for multiple seasons because he did it for 5. You do have some kind of background in it. I'm sure that he's had plenty of conversations with Steve Kerr. I'm sure he's had conversations with Mike Brown. I'm sure he had them with Alvin Gentry when he was there. I'm sure he's talked to a lot of assistants. He's not some guy that's never played basketball a second in his life. Okay, he knows what he's doing. And guess what?
Oh, go ahead.
They hired. They gave Jacques Vaughn, the interim head coach at the time, made him the highest paid assistant in the NBA.
Associate head coach. I was just gonna reference and say how important is keeping Jacques Vaughn for continuity and to kind of help Steve Nash along in the process.
I think it's a great thing to do because, number one, he's worked with the players. Number two, Jacques Vaughn is a very, very good coach. I'm not sure if he's a very good head coach, but he's one of those guys that deserves to be on his staff. I think as an assistant head coach, or as a lead or whatever he is, associate head coach, whatever you want to call him, I think he's perfect in that role. Some guys just aren't real guys that are going to take you over the top. Now, Jacques Vaughn did not have exactly the easiest road in Orlando, and he was walking right out the door before he figured out what the Magic franchise was about. But the Magic franchise has been dysfunctional for a while now, as far as coaches. Jacques Vaughn did the best job he could with what he had. I mean, he went to the bubble. And guess what? He did not have his leading scorers on his team. There was no Spencer Dinwiddie. There was no Taurean Prince. There was no DeAndre Jordan. The list goes on. No Wilson Chandler. Jamal Crawford gets hurt like 40 seconds into his first game with the Nets. So many guys were missing. And not to mention, he had Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving at all. So for him to do the job they did and actually was competitive in the bubble before the playoffs, it's a testament to him. It's a testament to the job he did. But there was no way he was going to be able to put those two guys in control. But because he's worked with the rest of the guys on the team, it's a good hire. Like you said, for once, it is for continuity purposes. It's a good hire. I don't mind it.
What are your expectations? Let's just say, irregardless to the bubble hoops this year. What are your expectations for next season? Is it championship or bust? Are they the best team in the East? What do you think about overall the Brooklyn Nets chances?
Well, one of the positive things I've seen with the Brooklyn Nets, especially in the press conference, is that Steve Nash said he was ready and willing and excited to work with Kyrie Irving to bring out the best in Kyrie Irving. He respects Kyrie's game all the way around and can't wait to get to work with him to get him on the same page. And to me, that shows that Steve is taking this thing seriously. Okay. There's always been, it seems like it's been a disconnect with Kyrie Irving and coaches. So when your head coach wants to personally go out and get Kyrie on the same page because you respect his game, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of isolation situations. There's going to be ways where Kyrie is going to be the guy on the ball and ball dominant. Also, at the same time, I think Steve Nash is going to find a way to be able to use Spencer Dinwiddie, be able to use Karis LeVert as third and fourth options next to Kevin Durant. Listen, the closing lineup for the Nets, if the team stays currently constructed and not moving anybody, Ted, you can throw Jared Allen or DeAndre Jordan at the center position with Kevin Durant, Karis LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Kyrie Irving all closing games out. The question is, who are you going to guard? Right. That's the point. If everybody's on the same page, all of them can shoot the basketball. All four of them can drive to the lane. All four of them create their own shot. It's pick your poison. Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan's job is to grab rebounds and dunk back offensive rebounds. That's it. Set screens and go. Kevin Durant coming off the Achilles injury, a lot of times people say you know, like it's not a lot of times, it just happens that you lose your explosiveness and your ability to get to the rim, but you don't forget how to shoot the basketball. And you don't forget how to be almost 7 foot tall anyway.
That's
so
true.
if he's not going to be able to dunk on you and do what he did in the past, he's still shooting over you. Okay, Karis LeVert, as we learned, can get to the basket. He can score, and guess what? We've seen Spencer Dinwiddie with Kyrie Irving. We've seen him without him. He's still a walking bucket. And let's just be honest,
he's dirty. Spencer is dirty.
And the better part about it is Kyrie Irving. Even if Kyrie gets hurt, Spencer Dinwiddie can take over. But then you have Kyrie Irving be able to play one-on-one because you can't double nobody in the court. And in a game of one-on-one trying to guard, Kyrie Irving arguably is probably the hardest player to guard one-on-one in the entire NBA because he's going to take you off the dribble. He can get to the basket. He's got a floater. And guess what? He can hit from anywhere on the court. So, and he can beat you off the dribble. So it's pick your poison. It's really is how Steve Nash can develop this roster, and also what coaches does he get to go around him and Jacque Vaughn to get this team to the next level. To answer your question of what the expectation is, it's got to be NBA Finals. But the only thing that's going to draw them away from the finals is Kevin Durant is not close to Kevin Durant. If he's not the same player, I'm not saying him 100%. If he's not even 90% of the player he was pre-Achilles, the Nets might not be able to make the finals.
I think the Nets go as far as that connection, that point guard / coach connection between Steve Nash and Kyrie Irving. That's going to take them as far as they can go. All the other pieces, I think, yes, of course, you got Durantula there as your number one scoring option, but it's all based on Nash and Kyrie.
See, I think it's the other way around. I think it's all about the health of Kevin Durant, because even if Kyrie goes on a tangent and if Kevin Durant's 100%, no matter what Kyrie does, the Nets are a top 2 or 3 team, because you can find ways to guard Kyrie Irving, because if you got to double him, if you got to use a bigger defender, you can do that. But you can't put a bigger defender on Kevin Durant because that's a center. Not every team has a Kawhi Leonard. So and Paul George only plays defense in the regular season because he gets torched in the playoffs or in game-winning situations. So and Jimmy Butler is only Jimmy Butler. How many guys that can guard Kevin Durant one-on-one? And as good as Jimmy Butler is 6'6", and Kevin Durant 6'11".
Right.
And Kevin's going to shoot over him. And Kevin can take you off the dribble. So if Kevin Durant is 95% healthy, the Nets are more likely win the East with no problem, even if Kyrie goes down. Because if Durant's not healthy, the Nets can't win. But if Kyrie goes down, Spencer Dinwiddie takes over point guard. So I don't think there's much of a fall off.
One final question, not Nets related. I'd say what's going to be their biggest competition? The Toronto Raptors. I just want you to talk about the greatness of Nick Nurse and just being that journeyman type coach, because when you think of something like this, he's just the opposite of being a lifelong assistant and then finally getting that opportunity. Talk to us briefly about the greatness of Nick Nurse.
Listen, Nick Nurse, before he was assistant head coach, he was a champion in the G League. He coached the Raptors 905 team to a championship that had guys in that roster that are on the current roster with the team now. So I think when you look, here's the thing. The G League has become more and more of a proving ground for different types of players and coaches around the league. Because the one thing the Raptors 905 had done very successfully and very effectively is the fact of they use a lot of the same systems, a lot of the same plays, a lot of the same terminology on the G League squad as they do with the big club. So when guys go up, it makes things easier. Look at Pascal Siakam. Look at Chris Boucher. Those guys, Terrence Davis, those guys played in that system. Norman Powell, they played in that system. They understood the terminology, so when they got to the big club, things were made easier. Listen, Ted, they are the prime example and the gold standard of how you use your farm system in the NBA to your advantage.
Right. That's your development league right there.
Yeah,
that's
and Nick Nurse.
League.
And listen, Nick Nurse is a very, very smart guy. He doesn't look like a basketball lifer, but the guy knows the game. He knows the X's and O's. And Ted, I'll be honest with you, he is probably one of the 3 best coaches in the NBA right now, all the way around.
Gotcha. Who's your other two? Who's your other two of the three?
Well, it's ironically the coach. If the Raptors win tonight, Monday on Labor Day, the guy he's going against, is arguably the best coach in the league. And that's Brad Stevens. But after the Game 3 incident where Taco Fall came in the game and somehow nobody figured out where OG Anunoby was, and now the series is potentially over because of it, I have Brad Stevens in the top two with Nick Nurse. And I'll be honest with you, of course, Pop is on the list, but I'm really big on Eric Spoelstra in Miami. I mean, Spoelstra's up there.
He's done a great job over the years.
And the thing is, he's not just Pat Riley's lead guy. Eric Spoelstra needs to be known to be Eric Spoelstra. He's not Pat Riley's video coordinator. He's none of this. Eric Spoelstra is a damn good coach. It's just, you have to call it for what it is. And outside of that, even though they lost in the first round, Quinn Snyder of the Utah Jazz is an outstanding head coach.
Gotcha. Hey, Danny, want to thank you for joining Late Night Parents tonight. I know you have your video show coming up within the hour. Tell us about ways we can watch you, ways we can read, the latest and greatest in NBA, bubble hoops, NFL, and all the above.
Well, you can watch my show on Zingo Television Channel 198, which is called Beyond the Buzzer. Myself and Kyle Nash, otherwise known as a student of the game, we go over anything and all things sports and a few things recreational now and then. We do that show on Monday and Thursday nights live at 9 p.m. on Facebook Live, YouTube, as well as Zingo TV. Talking Hoops will return tomorrow night with myself, on Tuesday night with myself and Deshaun Tate, talking all things hoops. So whether it be NBA, WNBA, high school, college, only thing we don't get into is rec basketball. If you do, send us the film on that too. We do that at 9 o'clock on Zingo TV and Facebook Live. You can check out my work with the Charlotte Hornets at si.com, as well as my work with the Carolina Panthers, the WNBA, and all things recreational sports over at 3pointconversion.com. And my Twitter handle you see on the bottom, scrolling on the screen, Danny DANY, number 3 Thompson on Twitter. So, as always, Mr. Hicks, has been fun as usual.
As always, thank you, Danny.
My pleasure, my friend.